Today we're going to be looking at a new frame. This is one of the lightweight frames. It looks like this. It's called the Realacc RFX185. And you can get this in a 160 also. But the reason I got the 185 is because it's supposed to support 5-inch propellers. Let's open it up and take a look. So here's all the parts laid out, and I tell you what, these arms are just so thin. If I measure this here, we can make sure this is zeroed. This thing, these arms are 8 millimeters wide and 4 millimeters thick, and it just has the 2 screw holes on here to screw your motor to, so you're not going to be using 4 screws on these. And the durability of this would probably be questionable, but if you're buying this frame, you're not buying it because you want a real durable frame. You want a light frame that's going to win races. And with this thing being as light as it is, I think this is going to be extremely light. I'll put some weights of other quad frames up on the screen here in just a minute when I go to weigh it. Anyway, it comes with a power distribution board and a few little spacers here to help mount the power distribution board. Some screws, and these look like they may have gotten a little wet at one time. A little bit brownish. Oh well. And they come with the cool spacers that are ridged instead of being the little smooth ones like they usually include. So anyway, we get this put together and we'll do some measurements on it. So here we are a little bit along in the build process, and the arms are all kind of, doing this number instead of being the same direction. And I did that only because that's how the pictures looked. But on here it has there's 2 screws holding each arm in place. And one of the screws, this outer one, is a real long one, and it has a little spacer there that screws down into place. And then it has these little shorter screws, and they're held in place with these nylon nuts, and they're barely long enough to grab onto the screw. But I think there's enough threads sticking through that it's actually going to hold in place okay. And the advantage of using the nylon nuts is they will have a less tendency to vibrate loose, so it should be okay down underneath your power distribution board here. And you can see there's just 2 screws holding each arm on. So this thing, there's just so little material to this frame so far. So here's the top part of the frame assembled, and you can see here how it has the metal spacer down here, followed by the power distribution board, followed by a nylon spacer, and then it comes with this little carbon fiber piece that goes in here. And you could put your flight board in here if you wanted to instead, but this is here, I think, just so if you have a soft mount flight board, you can put it inside there. And up here on the top, there's the spacers, and up here on the top, it has the main plate, or the main top plate, and then it has this little piece that if you loosen this up, you can adjust it so that your video transmitter can fit a little bit better one way or the other. Here we go. So it can move in and out just a little bit. I don't know if that's really necessary, but it's kind of cool. It gives a little bit of adjustment. And these side plates, these are the side plates. They're mounted on here with the zip ties, and I'll get those done here in just a second. But this frame is still just so little material to it. So here it is with all the zip ties still on it. I left them on there so you can see kind of how it's put together. But the front zip ties just go into these side plates, and then the side ones have the zip tie going through both plates. So there's a little wall on 3 sides of it. Next thing to do is to cut off the zip ties and put the little spacers in between the arms. So here's one of the little spacers in place. And you can see the included screws go through the 2 pieces, and they have a little bit left up here to grab onto the motor. So it actually comes with the right screws that you'll probably need for your motors. And these are actually 16 millimeters apart, the 2 holes there. And this is a DYS 2205 motor. And on here, these shorter ones, this is the next, yeah, here's the shorter ones. They are 16 millimeters across. So those are the 2 holes that it would be using. And if you're going to fly this, you definitely want to put Loctite on these screws because there's only going to be 2 holding it on. Usually if there's 4, Loctite's kind of questionable if you need it or not. But with 2, you definitely need it because the last thing you need to do is to lose one of those screws and just have this thing holding on with 1 screw in the motor mount. So once you have those 4 in here and all the motors mounted on here, this should be a pretty solid frame, and it should be able to take a little bit of abuse. I still worry about these arms being so thin, but like I said, you're not buying this frame because it's durable. You're buying this frame because it's light and you want to win your races. Let me get the scale out and we'll do a little bit of weighing on this thing. Here I have my scale out, and I'll go ahead and put this on here. That's the frame and the 4 arms, and here's 8 screws that'll hold the motors on. it comes up to be about 81 grams. That is actually very light. The lightest one I ever had was 50 grams, but the arms are so paper thin, anytime you crash, it always broke them. So just for comparison's sake, here's the X210 frame. It has the power distribution board and battery strap on it, and I'll weigh it. It comes in about 90.6 grams, so it's 10 grams heavier than the RFX185. So we'll get some more measurements off of this. We already know these are 4 millimeters thick. These little plates up here on top, these things are itty bitty thin, 1.5, maybe, yeah, 1.5 millimeters. So there's not a lot of support up on the top. But again, since the spacing between these screws is so thin, I don't think this top plate's ever going to break. And it has these side braces in here, and I tightened these zip ties up as tight as I could. So I think that's actually going to add a little bit more support to it also. Now these little spacers here, these little nylon spacers, they are 6 millimeters. And I would probably pick up an extra bag of those if I was going to build this frame, just because they'll probably be the first part to break on this. These top spacers here on top are 30 millimeters long, in case you wanted to get a different color set. Since this is the RFX185, it should be 185 millimeters across, and look at that, spot on 185. Now I was saying these arms are so thin, and here I'll place it next to this 210 here, and look at this. This just looks so much thinner. And the funny thing is that this only weighs 10 grams less than this. Here I have a 5-inch propeller, and if I center it over top of this motor hole, you can see that it clears everything in here just fine. And up here too, this is the front here. Yeah, it's clearing everything fine. So this thing should easily be able to run 5-inch propellers. 5-inch propellers is going to give this an enormous amount of lift. So this is the RFX185. Now I'm not sure where you would mount your ESCs. You could mount them out here, but they're going to be a lot wider than these arms. But I guess that would be okay, except now you're adding a little bit of drag. A better idea would be to replace this power distribution board with an all-in-one ESC. Then, man, you're talking about cleaning it up a lot. You just have wires running out here to your motors. That would be real nice. And then take this carbon fiber piece out, put a flight board right there, and if you could get quick connects to connect those two together, you would have an ultra clean build. There's probably enough room inside here for your receiver to go in there in the back of it, and then your video transmitter could sit out here on the back of this with the antenna sticking up, and you could run it right through this hole, and that hole, or this little piece of carbon fiber, would help hold that antenna in place and the whole transmitter in place, so if you crash, it's not going to go flying. Also, there's no HS1177 style holes on the sides of this frame to mount a camera to, so you'd probably have to mount it up here to one of these holes up here, and it would have to be the kind that has a little hinge on it that kind of bends back and forth to get a little bit of angle. But it is cut away, so you should be able to get a decent angle out of this. And like I said, the designers of this did a great job with a lot of this frame. Now, the only thing I would question on this are these spacers here, but I think it's just a small pack of 6 millimeter spacers would be in order to have on hand in case you did crash and break them at the race. But there's 4 of them holding the top on, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of weight up there, just because most of the weight's going to be down here in the ESC and the flight board. So anyway, I do like this frame though. Oh, also it has these grooves cut out down here in the bottom, and I would suspect that those are for running the battery strap through, and you should have enough room to run it through there and then put it down here between the power distribution board and the little nylon nuts there, and then back out. So your battery strap should have no problem getting on. Anyway, I don't know that I'm actually going to build this frame out. We'll see what happens. See if I get some extra motors or whatever and that I come across, or take them off one of my other quads. Anyway, this is the RFX185. If you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments. I'll try to help you out as best I can. And as always, thanks for watching.